Episode 61 of the Fired Coaches podcast. We have had national champions on this podcast before. I am for certain we have not had national champions this fresh. I'm surprised the net's not around his neck right now. John Bowler, head coach at Parkland in Illinois, men's basketball Division II national title winners after falling short by a point, if I'm not mistaken, against Kirkwood a year ago. Coach Bowler, a very highly decorated player at Eastern Michigan, spent time playing overseas. Has been at Delta State. He's been at Des Moines Area Community College. He's been at UW-Milwaukee, now at Parkland, kind of running his own show down there and obviously having a lot of success. I don't know that I owe this to have you on here, Coach Bowler, especially this soon off of a championship, but appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. I've actually listened to quite a few of these and been in these seats, and I really just kind of enjoy the open conversation. So I was willing to come on. So I'm soaking it in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And when I was doing some research on you, obviously you went to Niles Notre Dame High School in the Chicagoland area. And, back in my former day, I was an admissions counselor, had Illinois as my territory, never watched a game in there, but I did a career fair in there. And man, I know Illinois has got a lot of really cool gyms, but people I would share, I just don't want to get a copyright and have people attack me here, but that gym is one of my favorite gyms. I think it's pretty cool. What was it like playing in that, when you were a player?
It was pretty cool. It actually is really, really loud. I don't know what the acoustics are, but it just kind of sits like, and we had some unbelievable crowds back in the day, but specifically the Notre Dame St. Pat's game every year goes around on Twitter, on X, whatever the kids are calling it, Instagram, TikTok, but like, it goes around every year. Like, man, this is Chicago high school basketball. And now that they've kind of merged into that Catholic league, that's kind of like a super Catholic league from the old SEC, there's just going to be more and more storied tradition matchups. When I was there, St. Joe's was in the building. And I mean, us and St. Joe's was a battle every time. Pat's was a battle. Carmel, St. Viator. I mean, the gym is unbelievable. The experience is unbelievable. And being in an all boys school where guys are just going to be guys and be rowdy. It just, the intensity in the building's always there.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to games I've been at Fenwick before. I had a college teammate who played at Gordon Tech, which is now DePaul Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, just all those schools. And obviously St. Joe's, Coach Pingator was still around that time when you were playing, right?
Yeah. He was coaching the other team when I was there. And then he had continued coaching up until I think probably it would be about 7 or 8 years ago, now 9. And then St. Joe's kind of sadly closed right after that. But that was a basketball mecca.
Yeah.
And that was an intimidating place to play. When you walk in, you see all the
dark and dim kind of gym.
Yeah.
We were recruiting a kid from De La Salle one time, and I went and watched a game there, and I was like, man, this is, I think you're gonna walk into something super nice, or really, I'm like, this is St. Joe's.
We were never good against the press, and I swear to this day, they put the tightest nets up so the ball would slowly come out.
Oh yeah.
Set their press up. I swear it was a way for Coach Ping to cheat, but it was what it was.
Yeah. What led you to Eastern Michigan? And then obviously having a decorated career enough to go play overseas, like what led you to Eastern Michigan? And then, just kind of give us a little synopsis of the overseas career.
Yeah. So when I was coming out of high school, I was fairly kind of under recruited, to be honest with you. I just was a Northwest Side kid. And at that time, Notre Dame was not the most prominent basketball school. It had its moments where it was really good, but it wasn't like a highly recruited area or for Division Ones, but I just kind of continually got some publicity. I ended up playing in a 5-star camp, which back then I'm dating myself, but that was the way to get recruited.
Yeah.
But I went to one of the pits out at Robert Morris campus. Garf was the guy in charge, and he took a liking to me. I had a great week, and then he invited me back for the next weekend at the pit, which was kind of like the more higher level players. I kind of went to like the mid-level one. I could not stay for that following week. I had a family thing going on, and decided to leave. But that was where kind of the recruitment started. And then once that kind of happened, the name started to grow more and more and more. But I ended up going to Eastern Michigan because Jim Boone and Dave Pilipovich recruited me. Jim is now the head coach at Missouri Valley, but he is a legend. I think he's close to 600 wins at this point, maybe 700. But he's been around forever, a longtime Division II coach, coached at Robert Morris and coached at Eastern Michigan. And Dave Pilipovich, who is now at Colorado State as an assistant, but before that he was in New Mexico. He was head coach at Air Force. He worked for the Spurs for a little bit, worked at Michigan for Tommy Amaker. But both those guys just recruited me really hard. I had a bunch of kind of that MAC level offers, things like that. My mom was okay with me going away from home a little bit, but not too far.
How far to Ypsilanti, right?
Yeah, it depends on the Chicago traffic. Like you can get there in 5, to my house, 4.5. But, if you hit traffic at the wrong time of day, you might be in there for a good 2 extra hours. From that standpoint, it just fit what we wanted, and, their facilities are still amazing, and it was just an amazing school, an amazing situation. I wanna go into business or sports administration or sports management because I wanted to pursue coaching in the long run. We didn't know what that looked like. But I grew up as a kid who
No, I was gonna say, like, tears in the eyes moment, right? Like, being able
Yeah.
to have school paid for. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I ended up committing and signing after my junior year. So I signed fairly early. I ended up stopped playing baseball. We stopped playing football early, but then we got ready for the basketball, and then I went there with the idea of, like, I wanted to make the NCAA tournament. That was, like, my number one goal. I wanted to make the NCAA tournament, and I never really got around to making it there as a player, and then I kinda started to find out, like, "Oh, like, I think I could play this professionally." Like, there were some agents kind of reaching out at like, hey, when you're done, like reach out to me. And then all of a sudden it got to my junior year and Coach Boone was let go. I had to make some decisions about whether to stay or not. Transferring was not as, prevalent as it is now for sure. From that standpoint, we decided to stay. My wife, who I met there, was actually a volleyball player. There was just a lot of ties there directly between my friends and my wife. And then played one season for Charles Ramsey, and Dusty May was actually an assistant on that staff at that time. That was his first assistant job. I led the MAC in scoring and rebounding, and I kind of realized now I could really be a pro. But then there were some NBA teams that were kind of looking. So I ended up, getting a look from the NBA. I went to Portsmouth and played there. Then I turned around and immediately went overseas. And we signed a 2-year deal right away, which is pretty rare in the top league in Germany. And that was another situation for my dad where he's like, "Hey, we're not turning down some of this money." Like, and then ended up following up and staying with the same team for 2 more. So I was there for 4 years, and then we switched teams in the first league in Germany to another one. Had some knee injuries, dislocated my kneecap a couple times, decided to hang it up and get into coaching. We knew there'd be a long path for that and wanted to get into it. But I kind of always knew I wanted to be around basketball. We say it to our guys a lot, but we don't like plan B guys. I don't like guys who it's like, well, I want to rap on the side or I want to do fashion or like there are certain guys that I just want plan A guys where it's like basketball's it. I'm gonna throw everything into it. My priorities are my family, basketball, religion if you have it, like academics, those things are your plan A. And then you'll figure out your plan B when basketball's done. I just from that standpoint, I think that's who I was, like as a player, whereas like plan A was always basketball, and then moving forward, we'll figure everything else out. So
Yeah, and was Delta State your first job going to work for Coach Boone?
yeah, so Delta State was. I actually worked that year. I decided to stop playing. We had some contract offers to go back. We didn't decide till later. I actually worked at St. Francis in Toledo. My wife's from Toledo, Ohio, but I actually worked there for a couple months with a friend of mine, helping him out with his team. And then collegiately, Delta State was my first position. It was a GA spot, which, as you know, are the funnest spots in the world, where you don't get paid anything and you're expected to do everything.
So take
I
me through.
say that just because, like, I love the idea of working for Jim again. He's taught me almost everything about basketball. Unbelievable person, unbelievable guy. You're going to get better when you work for him. And I wanted it. I craved that. I didn't want going in and just being a GA and just, standing on the sidelines. I wanted this. I wanted to actively learn, actively coach, learn the recruiting process, and be able to go out and make calls. And the Division II level affords that stuff. So
Yeah, it's wild you bring that up about GA because I remember I was a GA at Carroll, Division III in Waukesha, and when I applied and got that job a few summers before when I was fresh out of college, I was not a professional player like you were. I was a professional bench warmer, but trying to find jobs, I never realized until there was an email and it was from a JUCO in Kansas. I can't remember which one. Still got the email saved somewhere, but the coach didn't CC or didn't blind copy people. He CC'd about the role being filled, and there was 125 names on there, and that was my first like people had said, hey, basketball's hard, you got to know people, right, and all that stuff. They tell you that, but then you see the email with all those names from across the country, and I was like, wow. And so getting that job at Carroll, and then when I left, the amount of emails and things I was getting when I was leaving of people like, hey, I heard you were leaving, like, I don't know who these people are, and this is well before social and stuff like that. But and Coach Boone's big with the pack line, correct?
oh yeah, huge. He's a
Yeah.
life or die guy.
I was gonna say, obviously being up here in Wisconsin and looking into all the Bennett stuff, I always ran across Jim Boone stuff, and I'm like, "Who's this Jim Boone guy?" Because I was just kind of very small in my paradigm of what I all knew, and I was like, I think Jim Boone was big with the Parkland and stuff like that too. So, going there as a GA and kind of doing everything, was there any better experience that you could have got than what you had there in terms of just figuring it all out, being on the other side of things?
No, no. I mean, we went to Sweet 16 that year, and winning's always, I coached or I taught a coaching authorization course, or I helped teach it at DMACC, and I always used to say to those high school coaches, like, so what's the objective? And they're like, oh, to have fun. And it's like, okay, but what is fun? And they would not know how to answer it. And I'm like, well, winning, like that's the objective. Like, yeah, you can have fun in your process of winning, but you want to win too. Yes, I had a crash course PhD in how to coach from Jim in those 9 months. That was just kind of immenseful. And I mean, I find myself going back to him quite a bit, just about like his mentorship and like, what he's done for me both as a player. I've seen that portion, and then what he's done for me as a coach, I've seen that portion. So it's funny. I kind of grew up with him as like a mentor and almost like another father figure as a player. And then I turn around and it's like kind of like a colleague, and I'm sitting next to him. He's holding me accountable, and he's demanding things out of me, which are good because then, that becomes my process moving forward. So, but it was unbelievable. I mean, learning the game, learning how to control pace and control tempo was always one of the best things that I've ever learned from him as a head coach. So
Yeah, no, that's great. From there you made the jump to, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, DMACC, Des Moines Area Community College. You're in a very good league out in Iowa out there. We're an assistant for 4 years before you took the head job actually for a year. Region 11 championship you guys had out there. What did you all learn? And I guess, being a, uh, Chicagoland high school player, going to Eastern, playing overseas and then going to Delta State. What did you learn in the JUCO world? Were you kind of aware of what, different level that was with 2-year players and guys coming and going, things like that? And kind of how'd you get connected with getting that job out there?
a friend of mine knew the head coach who was making the hire, and that's like most of those things. And he wanted a former player that was a high level player. He always felt like those guys related the most to the junior college players that we were bringing in, can help them hold them accountable a little bit more. And to be frank and transparent, like I went there with a lot of mentality. There were a lot of people like, oh, don't go JUCO, don't, maybe you shouldn't go to that level, maybe you should continue to chase this, or and I went there with the mentality. There were a couple of people that were like, oh, just go there, get the best players, and then move on with them. And honestly, I kind of fell in love with the level a little bit, and that's kind of why I hung around so long. There was 4 years that I stayed there as an assistant, and then one as a head coach. Part of the reason why I came back after my Division I stint, but like there's almost like a freshness and like a clearness and like a clarity behind junior college basketball, where it's like there's a pureness to the game of like these are just guys who are just they're chasing it. Like whether it's a kid from Iowa who had no other offers other than a JV spot at some place, or it's a kid who maybe was overlooked and just put himself in a situation academically where he had to go. Maybe it's a guy who played at a low level high school in a big city and got swallowed up by the rest of the recruiting, because that happens. Maybe it's a kid who just got hurt his senior year and sat out. Like it was kind of a hodgepodge of guys they were plan A guys. Like this is it. I'm chasing basketball, and if it takes me to Iowa, if it takes me to Kansas, if it takes me to Florida, if it takes me to Texas, I don't care what it looks like. And I really fell in love with that. And I firmly believe that the most impact you can have on a kid is in their first 2 years in college. We stress it to our players. The second most important summer in your entire career is your summer between high school and your freshman year, because that's where you can kind of develop a little bit more. You then run into hey, I just realized everybody else at the next level is going to be as good as me or better. And now I got to start to work my way up. Whereas you probably got away with it in high school. You were too good, and
Right.
you just were able to, relax and do some things poorly and drop your habits. The most important one is between freshman and sophomore year, because now you've seen it as a freshman. You know what it's like at the college level. You know where you got to get better and what you got to improve on. And now you have that summer to figure it out. And I always saw that the biggest jumps came between freshman and sophomore year. And at the junior college level, those are the only 2 years we got them, are the most important years in their lifespan of their college career. So I always felt like I could have the most impact on those guys because of those first 2 years that we had them at. But Iowa was great to me. That league is unbelievable, unbelievably underrated. I know we talked about our national championship game this year was Region 24 and Region 11, which Region 24 is where we're at. Region 11 is the Iowa one. And then conversely, last year is Region 11 and Region 24 as well. So I don't think there's any better regions at our level that can compete for national championships like those two regions are. And I happen to be lucky enough to serve in both of them.
I think you put that great with the JUCO world too. Like I think in some ways, and maybe it's just me, right? I've been out of it now 5 years, just kind of being, I wouldn't say more of a fan with all the movement and everything like that, but taking a step back, it's almost like in some ways, like I feel like junior college has kind of gotten forgot about because everybody's all about like, well, this guy's going to go D3 to D2 and D2 to D1 and low major to mid major and yada yada yada. And I feel like there's not a lot of talk about, which again, there's still JUCO kids out there. There's still guys playing at a high level, and there's still guys joining rosters. But I think in some ways like it's forgotten about, right? Because now it's like the motor mentality is almost like it's now Division 1, right? Where you see all the movement and stuff like that. Where like you said with JUCO, it's only the first 2 years. So any favorite stories from that time as an assistant, or even getting that first taste of being a head coach? Any favorite memories that you have? Like you said, you're like, this is where I found out I really wanted to come back to this level or really enjoy this. Anything that really stood out to you where, not necessarily a win or a loss or a moment with somebody, but anything that stood out where you're like, this is why I really like this level. Is there anything that stands out that way? I know
Yeah, I don't know. I think
picking,
it's, I
picking
don't,
moments is like picking kids, right? So
yeah, I don't know if it's like specific moments, but as much as it is the people. And I'm a big relationship guy and a big people person. So you might hear me say that a lot, but like, like we had a sports information director at DMACC, and it was his part-time job to do that. And you would have thought that this was this person's full-time job. Like he
sure.
was there 24/7. He announced for baseball games, did walkout music. He would do all the stats. He would walk in and do our games in PA. He would set up the live streams. He would have everything done for you. But the people there are the special portion of it, because you go to the Division 1s, you maybe would go to Division 2s, Division 3s, NAIs, but there's breakage kind of somewhat between administration and athletes, or athletes and professors. And we're walking down the same hallways as some of these junior college kids, and they're walking by professors or things like that. So I think that's one of the favorite stories that
Yeah.
I wouldn't say favorite stories, but favorite people that were around, because there's so much of that genuine relationship that happens there that I don't know if it's, I think structurally it's not able to happen maybe at some levels. It's not there, those people aren't there. It's just structurally it changes as the more you go up.
Yeah, no, you're right. And everybody on that campus knows who that person is because they're everywhere, right? But nobody maybe outside of Des Moines knows who that person is, but everybody there on that campus knows who that person is.
Yeah, absolutely. I say it in jest, but I'm walking around with the national championship trophy yesterday, and there's 50 people that are clapping and cheering and all that stuff walking around. And we Champaign's got a great basketball community, so they have a great feel, and they support Parkland quite a bit. But I'm sure there's other places where they walk around the trophy and they're like, "Who is that AAU team?" You know what I mean? But so I just think that there is a huge following at these specific institutions, these places like a DMACC, like a Parkland, these higher level ones where there is such support there, and such, I can kind of say, fondness for the people.
Yeah. So your first year, you led them 22-10 in that first season. Did you feel like you were ready for that to kind of take the head job? I mean, obviously a few years out playing professionally and everything. I mean, again, right? You're never ready, but how'd you feel going into that?
My ego at the time thought I was. Um, I look back on it and realize, like, I don't think anybody's ever really ready until you do it. And then I look back and I was like, man, I wish I would have done this, 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 and this. But if I'm keeping perspective, I probably wouldn't think that way without having jumped into that seat. I'm sure there's lifelong assistant coaches right now that are like, yeah, I can do that as a head coach. And once they get into the seat, they learn 50 million things that they forgot to prepare for. A lot of it for me was uh, I I thought I had the capability. I definitely knew like I had the pulse, which is a big thing for me. The pulse for a team, for a leadership standpoint. I was a three-time captain in Eastern Michigan. I was a captain on all of our professional teams. I just always was like a team guy. Like I always was. I use the word tribe a lot, but like I always had a tribe, and I always found a tribe, and I always was able to kind of get everybody together and rally them. So the pulse was always there. The execution was not at times. Like that's the area where I needed to grow up in. I needed to be better at. And I've learned that over the period between that and where I'm at now, which has helped me become a better coach. And my dad told me once, he goes, there's things you can always learn how to do things in two ways: learn what to do, what not to do. So I learned what not to do by trial and error, and I was able to kind of correct some of those.
Well, in some ways, I think, just personally belief, you're talking about being kind of a relationship guy and loving on people and stuff like that. And I think some ways when you're not as good as execution, if you're doing it the right way in terms of people, you can get past some of that, or at least you have that buy-in, right? Where if something goes wrong, it's like, hey, this dude likes me. And like, even though we lost, like, we're going to figure it out the next time. Right.
So it's almost like cologne or perfume, man. Like you can you can mask some issues. You can cover some things up by having the buy-in. So that, getting to 22-10 probably was more buy-in. Losing to Kirkwood and them going on and winning the national championship, and we had lost them 3 times that year. That was probably more the execution, the X's and O's. And I think you need to have both to be really good and sustain. And that's where I don't think that I was currently at the time. And I didn't know it until you don't know it until you fail. Failure success training. Like you don't know it until you get to that point where, hey man, I should have done this differently or I should have done that. It's the perspective or looking back on the hindsight and being able to learn from those that really changes people and make them better.
Yeah, absolutely. So you make the jump to Milwaukee, UW-Milwaukee. You joined Pat Baldwin's staff there. You were there for 3 years. I think there was a lot of buzz nationally with obviously Pat's son Patrick, who's been in the NBA for a while now and whatnot. What were those 3 years like going Division 1? Obviously, spend time at Division 2, spend some time in the JUCO world. Now you go to Division 1. Like, what was similar? What was different? What did you kind of expect from going there?
I expected like this. I don't know. I expected you know, I expected a lot. I expected it to be probably a little bit easier than it was. The Horizon League at the time was really, really loaded. I know there's been some conversations about which leagues are better in this, that, or the other, especially Horizon and MAC. But like the Horizon League, personally, when I was playing, the MAC was top 10 in the country, and the Horizon League I think was top 12. They had Butler still.
Yep.
They were very loaded. Milwaukee was the Sweet 16 team roughly around that time. So the MAC, the Valley, and the Horizon were elite. They've kind of dropped a little bit. A lot of that has to do with conference realignment. A lot of that has to do with, teams being pulled out of the Horizon, not as much out of the MAC, but some other things has like the creation of the American Conference, like which nobody talks about, but that was never around until like 12 years ago. And then all of a sudden it started pulling from Conference USA and everybody else. And I mean, people forget Memphis when they had Derrick Rose was the Conference USA team its first year. So I just, from the totality of everything, I think I expected a lot of being able to come in, impact, and win right away. And I think that there was a process that I was walking into. This was where the organizational side of me kind of changed, like the X's and O's, the execution. This is where I learned a lot from the staff there of what to do, what not to do, what we need to do moving forward, what I need to do to be better as a coach. There was a lot of trying times for myself of, introspective looking inside of myself and being like, hey, you're doing this wrong. You need to fix this and we need to move forward. For me to kill some of that ego that I thought I had from being a high level player, but kill that ego and basically be like, okay, now how can we fix some of the things we had going on? And I mean, we doubled our win percentage since we were there. We recruited a top 50 class in the country or whatever it was. Now a lot of that had to do with PBJ, but I mean, talent wasn't necessarily the issue. It became, the cohesiveness of a group and some of the other stuff, a little bit more buy-in to each other, maybe not necessarily to the coaches. I think that was there at times. I think the buy-in to each other was something that we needed to have more of. It doesn't help when you have so many injuries and guys are sitting out quite a bit. If you really look at that team and how talented they were, it almost makes me want to puke about like how good we were. But sometimes there's amassing too much talent. There's something that's true there. But I couldn't be more thankful of my time there. Milwaukee has some unbelievable people, and you can see by Bart's success after those years. I hold no grudges from it. I'm a very realistic person, and I think Pat's very similar from the standpoint of like we didn't get it done.
Yeah.
And that's a place where expectations are very high for that sport, and as it should be. But there's a lot to learn about it, and I think I've become a significantly better coach. And it goes back to that statement, like for failure, success training. Like it's just learning how to get to where you want to be and what you want to do if you're willing to look look at the reasons you fail.
Absolutely. No, and that's the key, right? And a lot of people, I mean, I think you see it. You can say it for coaches, business owners, whatever it is, right? You go from one thing to the next thing, and sometimes, coaches, whether it's too quick or there's just no reflection time at all to look back at what went wrong, and it's just same mistakes repeated, repeated, repeated. I remember going up to the Rush Center and watching you guys play Green Bay, and I think Patrick was just coming off of an injury, played through it, and like you could see, like there was like, but again, when he was in and out of the lineup, and just again, right? Sometimes it's just it doesn't happen, right? And there's a lot of different things, and especially at that level, of reasons why and why it didn't happen. I think it was early 2022. I think it was March. You guys were let go. In that moment, obviously, right, not a great feeling. Was your thought like, obviously I go get another job, but was it also like, hey, maybe I do want to go back to the junior college world? Like, where were you sitting at that point?
Yeah, I think there was the initial thing was dealing with, obviously family and where we're at and, what that looks like for us. There was definitely some talk of like, okay, is this what we still want to pursue? Not from my wife's standpoint, because her and her family, my mother and father-in-law and my parents were very supportive of like, you have a gift for this. Like, this is not where it ends for you. Trust God and move forward here with what you're doing. When that happened, there was some Division I stuff that had come up. I don't know if I wanted to be that guy that was like, hey, I'm going to jump on for another year somewhere, and then hey, I'm going to jump on for maybe two. I don't know what stable ground they're on. I don't know how talented that group is. I'm going to join them in June, and after they've done recruiting, like there was a lot of iffies. From a side standpoint and a personal standpoint, I had watched that DMACC team continue to grow. So when I left in July, we had recruited an entire roster. We had kept that roster together. I had left. And then when I got to Milwaukee, Josh Shass stepped in and did an unbelievable job with somebody else's players, which is hard enough as is. But he did a great job, and he's a damn good coach. And they ended up being, I think it was number one in the country at the time, going into the region or going into the national tournament. They just won the region and shut down the tournament because of COVID. Well, then Josh took another job, and then Brett Putz comes in, who's another great coach, and he's at St. Louis. Josh is at Iowa now, currently still playing. But Brett comes in, and they add a few pieces. I think Josh had recruited one kid who they had signed. They added a kid that we recruited the year before, but basically we put him back in contact with Brett. And he did a great job of closing the deal. And then there was another kid that they had added. So there was only really kind of three new pieces, and then they went on to win a national championship. So I think like from just a personal standpoint, it's like, man, like kind of helped build that. And I had some DNA behind it that I kind of gave to some other people, which for sure they deserved all the credit because they did the legwork, they did the hard work. But I think I'm just speaking of myself personally. I was kind of like, there's some unfinished business here as a head coach. I felt like that, and I wanted to kind of try and chase that again. Not negatively against those guys, more positively for myself. Of like, hey, there is something about this being a head coach and being at that level that I felt like I was unfinished business. There were a couple of junior college jobs that I interviewed for that summer. One of them basically went in a different direction, and then the other two, one of them was Parkland, and one of them was a different one. And Parkland basically came forward and decided to offer me the position, and I think it fit kind of what me and the family were looking for. Me being from Chicago, my wife being from Toledo, fairly close to where we grew up. Could stay in the Midwest. It wasn't the worst move in the world, being 3.5 hours from Milwaukee to here. So it kind of aligned, but I think there was that feeling of like, I want to get back to sit in that seat, and I want to get back and try to chase it again because I did it with them and they were able to kind of take that and build it up. And I'd like to do that for myself.
Yeah, and I don't want to like, I guess what's the best word here? I don't want to like summarize this, but you've been at Parkland for 4 years. A year ago, you lost the national title by a point against Kirkwood, as we talked about. This year, you win it. You're 109-29 overall. You guys won the first title, I think, in like 40 some years. I think since I was born in '86. Again, I don't want to like just combine this all together because there's a lot of impressive things out of here. But did you think that this would happen this quickly? Where you're like, hey, we got success, we got this thing rolling. I mean, could you have ever imagined it? Whether it's you were finishing professionally and a UWM. At any point, did you think like, hey, I could really get something going somewhere this quickly and consistently?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say this is the plan from the beginning. Probably wasn't. I personally have been the type of human where it's like, when we do this, our goal is to win a national championship. Our goal is win. So like we've always talked about it. we've always talked about winning championships, winning, whether that be realistic for each team or not. That's what our mindset had to be, just because that's who I am. And there are times where that conversation may be delusional. I think part of that is going into like building confidence in the team that they know they're good enough. Now, I'll tell you this, there was a lot of people that did not think it was going to happen, because when I first started my tenure here, we started 0-5. So of that record that you're saying of 129 and whatever it was, like, our first 5 games were losses. And then we swung that season and went to 18-13 at the end of the season. We finished second region, second in conference. We finished in the region championship game and lost to Danville. But then since then, we've really kind of pieced it together. A lot of it has come just from continuity. Like, we've built a culture here that is very players mentality first. A lot of plan A guys who aren't going to put up with any sort of failure, or they're not going to be okay with not being around basketball, or they're not going to want to be late or anything like that. They want to be at the gym every day. Guys who want to practice every day, who love practicing. Because guys who love practicing, then they love playing.
So how do you identify those guys? Like, I mean, I don't need to go into all your details of recruiting and the secret sauce. And again, you sound like you're a huge relationship guy, but to me, right, like, it doesn't matter the level. Finding kids that care about basketball, care about academics, care about wanting to take the next step in their life. Like, there's always things, especially in a long basketball season, especially when you're playing into March like you are. How do you just keep those things, top of mind, and like right when the adversity hits, whether it's a bad loss, whether it's 0-5 in a row, like, how do you just keep the faith and keep going? Like, there's a lot of different things here, and if you do really well, national title, but there's more to things after JUCO as well too, whether that's next step for a 4 year or whatever else.
Mhm. Yeah, and we talk about like authenticity in our program. That's one of my core values. But like being as transparent as I possibly can, being as truthful and honest as I can with these guys, whether they like it or not. I think there's a level of respect they then have for me. To identify those guys, we look at their family members, we look at who they live with, who they spend the majority of their time with, what their friends look like. And when we bring them in for visits, we try to see them play, we try to see them get up and down, we try to see them. We put them in some one-on-one competitions, some two-on-two, just kind of see who competes. Now, those things can still fool you, because you never know a player until they play for you, and a player never knows a coach until you're able to coach you. But I think a lot of it comes down to fighting for your culture in every instance and every day. There's a lot of people that think there's little things that don't matter. You might be up 40 in a game and it's like, oh, well, you just threw it away, let it go. Like, no, like we fight for those moments almost more importantly than we do some of the bigger ones. Because if we show that we care about every possession, then we're probably going to care about every possession. So I think it comes down to the reinforcement, the authenticity, the truth, the transparency behind all of it. Then these guys really respond to that. It's funny because I always tell them, like, my first year, I was like, my favorite line was from Dusty, but he said it to me. But he's like, sometimes you got to treat guys like relief pitchers, and who's ever got it that day stays in. And I have used it probably far more than he meant it.
I'm gonna
I
test this
said,
out.
I said all the time to our guys, I'm gonna be like, hey fellas, like, you're relief pitchers. If you got it, you're staying in. If you don't, you're coming out. And I think there's a level of like transparency behind that idea that these guys love, like, where it's like, no, it's okay if I maybe make one mistake, but if I'm off, then I just know I got to play better.
It's not like I'm Coach Bowler's favorite and I'm not playing right. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
that's what it is, right?
Yeah, and we've won with walk-ons. We've won with guys who, we've had guys not play for 3 games in a row, and then we throw them in, they play 15, and it may feel weird, and then maybe they get back to 8 minutes the next game and 8 minutes the next game. I mean, we won our PMA game last year with a kid who averaged 16 minutes a game, played 27 or 28 minutes in that game, and he had 22 points. And I think a lot of that was they all believe in the relief pitcher mentality, where it's like, if you do what you're supposed to do for the team and you just maybe get rolling and you're doing the right stuff and you can help us win, then hey, he's going to lead you in. So, I think that's where you find out where most of these guys, how much buy-in they have. So,
There's a real thing to being ready though, right? Like, hey, I mean, literally, and you prove the point, right? Especially even like you said in the Pima game and things like that. Like, I think when it's proven, right? Because I think there's a lot of right. And again, kudos to you. I think I've gotten better now that I'm at 40 years old with being more transparent and direct on things. Where it was always you want everybody to feel good, and you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. But I think the more that you can just be honest, but then actually prove it in action, as opposed to, hey, be ready, right? I mean, I had high school coaches writing football and things. Hey, be ready, we're gonna put you in. It's like, okay, you're ready. And then it never happens. And it's like, when you actually say that and you follow it up, you talked about consistency too. Do you think with the landscape changes at the highest level, because I think for the longest time, right, people at JUCO were like, well, he's going to be there 1 year, he's going to go to a different school the next year, right? Like, do you think there's more consistency now at the JUCO level than we're seeing at the higher levels?
Man, I think that's a loaded question. Yeah, I try to avoid generalities as much as I can. I'm going to channel Sundance here by making a Star Wars.
Only
Um,
good.
only Sith deal in absolutes. So he'll enjoy that one if he ever sees it. But from that standpoint, I try not to make those sweeping generalities, but I do think that there is some level of consistency at the junior college level that really puts us, I wouldn't say at an advantage, but like when you have a good culture, I think anywhere you can get guys to stay. Now, obviously, there's less money involved at our level. There's less NIL, and I can't blame kids for wanting to improve their lives personally, improve their families' lives. I can't blame them for that. I can blame them if they're constantly doing that and they're chasing it, chasing it, chasing it, because there's a level of improving your family's lives, and then there's a level of greed, you know. But I think at our level, because you're not dealing with as much of that, there probably is some more continuity and consistency. I think at the Division III and NAI, for the most part, I know it's really messed with some of the Division II stuff. It looks like this year that we've had a lot of Division II transfers go in, but moving from Division II to Division I, whether it's a coach or a player, is now becoming a much, much more higher trend. So at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to the culture that you have. The dollars and the cents will work themselves out. Right now, we returned 3 to this team from last year's team. The year before that, we had 7. The year before that, we had 6. And this year, I haven't had my full exit meetings yet. It's still fresh, but I think we may have 5 or 6 that return to this one. So continuity has been one of the things we've been blessed with quite a bit. Now, some of that's roster construction too. Like we're not just loading up on all sophomores that got to leave anyways. We're taking some high school freshmen that we're building up. We're taking some redshirt freshmen that maybe have a medical red shirt or sat out last year at Division II or Division I, so that we can get a little bit more continuity behind that.
That's very cool. Obviously we're talking about the Kirkwood loss last year to turn it around this year. I read on Yahoo, and I got to quote you here. If Yahoo's correct, it said to put on your life resume that you're a national champion, no matter what you're doing, well, you're the best in the world at that time and at that level is really special. Again, obviously have not been in that position to lose a national title game by 1 point and then regroup the troops and, be hungry and right. You never know with injuries and adversity and everything that goes on in a season. What did it go like from feeling like we're there, but we're not there to we are there?
Yeah, I mean, man, like it was wild. Like, I mean, we knew we were good enough even with the 8. Like we knew we were talented enough. I just kept saying, I hope we don't run out of gas. Like you got 8 guys, Danville, Hutch, like these tournaments at the lower levels can be taxing. You don't have 2 days off. You don't have a week to prep. Our schedule this year was we had first day off, or I'm sorry, we played Monday night, then we had Tuesday off, then we had Wednesday off, then we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we had to play Elite 8, Final Four, national championship game in 3 days with 8 guys. So I'd love to sit here and say that this was all the plan and that we knew. But I think our focus, like we have said this multiple times, and like I took this from 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni book, but attention to result is one of the dysfunctions of the team. Too many people within the team don't focus on the result. They focus on their individual success or their individual failures. They focus on the individual. They don't focus on the attention to the result. So we've kind of skewed that point. And we've said, a lot of people talk about the process and the journey and focusing on the day. We talk about dedicated to the process with an attention to result, right? Whereas we're going to dedicate ourselves every day for that moment. We can only impact that day. We can only impact that practice. Let's do it. Let's get better. But did we win or did we lose? Like, though, that's the most important thing. When we get to game day, I don't care if you took 15 shots, you missed all 15. Did we win or did we lose? If your attention result is the win, then that means you took the right shots and we got what we needed to get to. Maybe you were playing defense better. Maybe you were getting some assists. Maybe you rebounded your behind off. Maybe you were just doing all the right stuff. But like if you're focused solely on, well, man, I didn't hit shots, or oh, I played like trash. Well, then you're not worried if the team's going to win or lose. Like, so therefore you've already lost. I think that mentality carried over like late in the season. And I think it was kind of a byproduct of what culture we had built over the last 4 years was, we're only focusing one game at a time. We can look at the bracket all we want, but you don't get to the next 40 without you winning this 40. Like, so we never even talked about who the next round was. We knew Danville was potentially down the line. We knew Milwaukee Area Tech. We knew whoever came out of the other bracket. I know DMACC was really talented. Pima again.
And if somebody
That
hasn't
was,
seen Division II junior college basketball, I entertain you to go watch a game because it is high level basketball.
yeah, and it is loaded. One of the most fun things, total sidebar, is the styles of play can be wildly different. And a lot of it is matchup driven. Like, you may get into a matchup and you might be the right team. Like, that's what happened with us and Pima. We were the right team to slow them down. We were. But if you saw them the whole year, they were like a wrecking ball, just blowing teams up that just couldn't slow them down and couldn't dictate tempo and couldn't control the glass. And we were just the right team at the right time. And we ended up dictating our tempo versus theirs. So, but yeah, anywho, I think it just kind of got us to the point where that mentality of impacting the day became so important. Whereas, like, we were focused on that game, Johnson County, find a way to win, find a way to win. And then we'll get to the next one. Then we'll talk about that. And then find a way to win against Milwaukee Area Tech. And then it was Danville again. It's like, hey, 40 minutes, find a way to win, whatever it looks like. I don't care if it's ugly or beautiful. It's got to be a win. And I think that attention to result really carried us, man. Like, it just did. It settled our guys down. It kept them in the moment. It kept them very present. And it's hard to do, especially when you come off a national championship. Human nature is relaxed. You go and you play in the national championship game, and there's
It'll
a
be
lot of
easy,
people,
right?
yeah. Either it's going to be easy, or it's like, hey, you know what, man, I already achieved that. Let's go do this. And not to get long-winded, but like, basketball is kind of inherently a selfish sport where anybody can get all the points and the rebounds. Like, in football, like, the offensive lineman can't go out and get a pass. It's in the rules. Like, so there's certain rules in certain sports where you have to play your role. In basketball, you can get all the rebounds, you can get all the points, you can get all the assists. On top of that, we're at a inherently selfish level where nobody has chosen that school as a finality, because you only can be there for 2. You're choosing that school based on the idea of you want to give to another 4-year school after that. So this is a tough level to kind of fight those demons of like, hey, man, I already achieved winning. I already achieved chasing a national championship. Now it flips to, all right, well, maybe I'll just do my own thing next year.
Right.
This was different. Like, this group was like, no, it worked last year. We loved it. We saw these guys move on from that year. We're flipping that switch again, and we're all about it. I kudos goes to them, man. Kudos goes to those guys.
Yeah, no, I love that point because, right, I mean, individually, you're like, hey, if I'm going to play, right, and again, this goes for all levels now with the portal and NIL and everything, there can be a lot of me selfish, I'm going to get mine, whatever it is, right? I love how it's like, short-term you, right? Like, I played really well. Okay, great. Next game, right? I didn't play well. Okay, great. Well, how are you going to play better? But long-term, like, did we win or lose? And if we won, how do we keep that going? If we lost, how do we figure it out? That's awesome. I'm assuming I should ask you at the start, being a Chicago guy, are you a Bears fan?
I am not.
Okay, we probably shouldn't have did this podcast then. So when you were talking about an offensive lineman, I'm thinking about Packers throwing it to Kennard and he's running and he fumbled the ball in that playoff game. So I guess to wrap up here, how do you get better? I mean, obviously it seems like you're reading, you're trying to pull stuff from wherever. Like, how do you get better on a day-to-day basis?
I would say staying hungry, like staying addicted to the process, staying addicted to the winning side of it. Like, obviously I'm soaking in a lot of the championship stuff now and I'm loving it. But the other side of me is like, okay, how do we rebuild? Like, how do we get back? Like, I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. It's what made me like a good player. Like, I always had a chip on my shoulder and I always felt like somebody's going to find out I wasn't as good as they thought I was. Or I always felt like somebody was going to get found out that's better than me.
Does that come from parents, from you just growing up? Like, where does that come from?
I think it comes from the neighborhood. I had 3 older brothers too. Like, the neighborhood I grew up in was just Northwest Chicago. It was a lot of cops, firefighters, paramedics. It was the furthest Northwest you can live and stay in the city. So you get a lot of, people who wanted to stay in city limits so that they could work for the city. I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's a little bit of kind of the underdog mentality. I was the youngest of 4 boys, and they always used to beat the crap out of me all the time.
I was wondering if that was the case.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just think it was always inherently like I love that underdog story. I love the fighting. I mean, I was a mid-major player, man. Like, it's what it was. Like, I always wanted to prove myself, and I always wanted to do the things needed to do to prove that. And right now, like, there's that panic's kind of setting in. It's like, okay, how do we rebuild? How do we reload? Like, what does that look like? Okay, if we don't make a run again, like, is this the last time we'll ever do it? Like, you'll never get a shot at it again. And it's kind of that little voice talking in your back of your head. And a lot of former athletes have it. You got to kill part of the player. That was one of the things I kind of talked about with a bunch of people. if you're a high level player, you kind of got to kill a little bit of that player to become a really good coach and teacher. Because there's so many times I find myself where it's like, why can't you make that pass? And I'm like, well, I'm telling that guy to make that pass, but I'm 6'9" and he's 6'3".
I was actually going to wrap up with that because honestly, just looking at, your background, Division I player, playing overseas as long as you did, and again, having as much success, I would say, right, overall as you have had in your career here early, to me, that's the thing though, right? Like you're like, because I think there's so many, right, that statistically you look at the coaches, even professionally, right, that how many guys are professional head coaches or high level college coaches that never got off the bench and never played, right? And it's like they have a different perspective than the guy. It's like, well, just do what I did, right? Or just do it this way, right? Like that's a real thing.
Yeah. Oh, it happened for me early. It was just like, dude, it's not that hard to make that shot. For me, it's not. For that guy, it is. Or it's like, here, just do this move. And it's like, well, inherently, he doesn't functionally have the tools to make
Yeah.
that move that I had. So I think I had to kill part of that player.
But great self awareness on your part, though. Honestly,
Yeah, I try to be a little bit self-aware, and that goes back to like getting better. Like I try to read some philosophy books. I try to talk to other coaches, see what their mindsets are. I try to talk to them as much as I can about culture and like what works for them. I try to take theirs and impart it into mine without completely changing who we are because I got to do what works for us. I think it's also understanding the difference between confidence and ego. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned over my time that has helped me, get better. It's like there's a difference between confident what you teach versus ego, which leads to stubbornness and not being able to change. So learning those things over time from all the great mentors I had and all the great people that I've been around and can impart from has been one of the things that makes me, I guess, kind of crave wanting to get better. So
yeah. Well, this is awesome. Again, you coming on regardless, right? Just coming on the
Bears
podcast.
fan or not?
Bears
Bears
fan or
fan.
not. I mean, I saw somebody. So opening day yesterday, went to the Brewers game. Usually go to one or two a year, and I'm further up north than I used to be now. But I'm standing in line, and we're waiting to get picked up after the game by one of the little shuttles. And I look over, and I'll tell you, this guy was an absolute doppelganger of Caleb Williams. I wanted to go up to him and be like, "Just can you please just leave?" It just rubbed back to the Packer Bears season instantly. So, no, I honestly appreciate you coming on, especially so soon after this. I'm, super happy for you, especially bouncing back after this past year. I mean, that's I can't imagine. Again, right? You said this early in the episode about the hindsight, right? What could I have done differently? What could I have done? What can I? And so that past year of like, right, you sit there with a 1 point loss in a national title game, and you're not just going, well, we're on to next year, right? Like you're going to overthink that quite a bit. So to be able to pull that off, it's nice that I'm hopefully you're getting a little bit of sleep outside of all these interviews that you've been doing.
Yeah, we're mixing it in. Right now I gotta go coach May basketball tomorrow, so get some recruiting in too as well. So
Yeah. Well, Coach Buller, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you listening to some of the episodes, like you said you did. I'll have to send Sundance this and see if he listens to it as well too. But yeah, appreciate you jumping on and taking some time.
awesome. Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate being invited on any other time. I'm more than willing to come back. I mean, I'm about talking to good people and being on good shows and things like that. So if you ever need me again, let me know.
All right, appreciate it.